Staying Alive UK. Share your story.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Share Your Story podcast. I'm your host, Michael de Groot, and I will be talking to business owners who share their business biography. I'm delighted and really excited to welcome on the show a friend, a thought leader, a trainer, coach and inspirator, Richard Tubb. Welcome, Richard.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I'm absolutely blown away to be your first guest on the Share Your Story podcast. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Richard is putting IT consultants back in control. On a day-to-day basis, he provides IT businesses expert advice to help them grow and working with the owners of IT businesses to help them free up their time, concentrate on doing what is important and making more money. Don't we all want to do that? He's also passionate about social responsibility, professionalism in IT, and retro computing. That last one is definitely interesting. Richard, are you willing to share your story?
I am, Michael. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, firstly, Richard, tell us a little bit about your personal life. You know, where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was your first job? How did you get into business? And then we'll get into the business bit afterwards. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal life.
Sure. So you can probably tell from the accent I'm from Birmingham in the West Midlands, or perhaps you can't. I've been told that I've acquired over the years, I think, what they refer to as a telephone accent. The reason for that, Michael, I do a lot of speaking and webinars and podcast interviews with people from all over the world. So I think I'm a little bit of a chameleon, pick up the accent of wherever I go.
Well, mid-Atlantic accent.
That's it, yeah. And I think I've learnt to speak in such a way that hopefully I can be understood by the vast majority of people around the world. Personally, I can still hear the Brummie, very much so. So, born and bred in Birmingham, specifically southwest Birmingham in an area called Wheely Castle, which often confuses my American friends, so they assume I live in a castle. I don't disarm them of that idea at all, just because I like having fun with them. But no, Wheely Castle is based about 10 minutes away from Bourneville, the famous home of Cadbury's chocolate factory. And yes, we do indeed have a castle. It's a council estate here, and in the centre of the council estate is the ruins of a medieval castle. So it's a nice place to be brought up in.
Brilliant. And so this is an Englishman and his castle then, isn't it?
Indeed it is, yeah.
So where did you grow up there as well?
Yeah. So my parents moved to Wheely Castle, I think, when I was about 2 years old. And so I've been brought up here. Moved away, I think, when I was 17, 18, but came back and bought a house here. And in fact, it's still the same house I'm in now. So I bought this place when I was 18, I think it was.
Really?
19. Yeah. So
wow.
It was a huge leap for me as a kid from a working class background. But one of the best things I've done, I think, it taught me the value of stretching myself and having goals early on. And I'm still in this house. I've just turned 39. So yeah, 18 years later.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. That's really fantastic. That I do like that. I mean, I'm a bit of a gypsy because I've lived in many different places, and of course, England is not my home where I was born. So it's a bit strange to hear people that have kind of grown up and lived in the same area. But I think that's nice as well, because you've seen obviously many changes in where you live too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you mentioned the social responsibility that I'm passionate about. You know, the older I've got, actually, the more passionate I've got about the local area, and seeing that people have the opportunities and people are proud of their local area as well.
Sure.
Plus the fact, because I've grown up here, I went to school here. There's still a lot of school friends. In fact, I was out just this past Friday gone with a couple of friends who I went to infants and junior school with.
Oh, my word.
It's nice having those long-term bonds and being able to walk around an area where you know people and people know you.
And do people say you still look the same?
If they do, I suspect they're telling very generous porcupines, but no, for the most part they don't.
Okay, that's all right then. And what about, share a little bit about your hobbies and your interests, if you have time, because I know you're a very busy person, but Have you got any free time, and what do you do with it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get onto the story of the business side of things, but one of the areas that I'm very passionate about is work-life balance, or life-work balance, as I call it, because I believe life comes first.
Sure.
And since selling the business a few years ago, I actually decided to take an experiment of go through an experiment of taking Fridays off, not working at all on Friday,
Right.
which is actually, and perhaps we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so subsequently, I've gone both ends of the spectrum where I was working very, very hard when I was running the IT business. Perhaps too hard, working too long hours and things.
Sure.
To now, free time and hobbies are a very important part of my life. So yeah, I do take Fridays off, and I'm very intentional about the time that I take off. When I first started that experiment of taking Fridays off, I wasn't so intentional, and so I knew I wasn't working, but I didn't know exactly what to do with myself, because I do enjoy my work. It is a pleasure to me, so it's certainly not a chore. But then I realised in a short period of time, unless I was intentional about my time off, I'd actually waste it, just watching TV or doing a little bit of work, or generally bumming around and not doing very much. So now I'm quite intentional about my time off. I enjoy spending time with friends, with family. I love going to the cinema, catching up on movies. I do still watch TV, but I'm very intentional about the television that I watch. I don't just passively watch TV. I'm a great one for Netflix and Amazon Video and personal video recorders in general. I do a lot of reading as well. So I'm a massive comic book geek. So I've got a huge comic book collection. So I get a lot of pleasure out of that. And as you've alluded to, I'm also into retro gaming. So if your listeners haven't already got the impression they should have by now, I'm a massive geek in many different areas of life. And so I was brought up. Mum and Dad bought me an Atari 600 XL with a huge 16K of memory when I was 9 years old. And so I learnt to program that and grew up around computers. So I'm hugely, it's a nostalgia thing for me, but I'm hugely passionate about the history of computing. It means an awful lot to me. I'm a supporter of the Retro Computing Museum over in Leicester, which is a physical museum that the chaps over there have put together,
Right.
With all the old Ataris and Commodores and Spectrums and things like that. So I get a lot of pleasure from it, and I think it's really important for us to understand where we've come from in the UK with the IT industry as a whole, and what it means to a whole generation of people like me.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing that insight with us. I think it's really fascinating to hear what people do in their spare time and what their interests and hobbies are, because I agree with you. Sometimes your business, it is a bit, in my case, your business can be your hobby as well. But I do agree, you do need to pull yourself away from it. And what a fantastic concept to take Fridays off. Let's get that idea out there to other people and see if they can manage it as well. In fact, Holland, or the Netherlands, as correctly it should be known, they have a lot of companies have a 4-day week there. And I think in the Scandinavian countries, I think there was a report out not so long ago where they were talking about doing exactly the same. And giving people, making sure they don't work long hours and giving people more time with their family, because they believe they're going to be more productive when they're in the business and do their work in less time but more productively.
Yeah, and it's worth just sharing, a bit of background. So I mentioned it was an experiment. So as you know, Michael, I'm a huge fan of experiments. I find that if you label something as an experiment,
yes,
it takes away the fear for a lot of people of, saying people are fearful of change, aren't they? And so if you say,
Sure.
hey, we're changing this, we're doing something new, people are like, not so sure about that. Yet experiments, people seem much more open to the idea.
Yes.
So I experimented with the idea of taking Fridays off. I think that was about 3 years ago, and pretty soon it became the norm. And now people know me and know the business, as somebody who takes Fridays off there. So I was reading a BBC News article just the other day about Sweden and the I was going to say the craze, but the culture that is slowly but surely becoming accepted in Sweden is shorter working days. Working from 8 till, I believe they work until 3:30 in the afternoon. They do have an hour for lunch, and then they go home and they spend time in the lovely hills and doing all the things that Swedish people get to do in their beautiful country across there. Not everybody's doing it, but for the most part, those that are doing it are swearing by it. And I would encourage anybody to do it. And for those of you listeners who are thinking, I'm too busy, there's no way I could work a 4-day week, I would say this. I pretty much thought the same thing as well. What I've concluded is I'm actually more productive in the 4 days that I work now. I flap around less. I do less of the things that are genuine, not important. In those 4 days that I do work, I concentrate on the important. I get the important done. I also get it done more efficiently because there is really an artificial deadline imposed upon my work there. And so every Thursday evening, every Thursday afternoon, I close down. I set my out of office message. And it's accepted by my clients, by the people I work with, by the general business community that I'm a part of. It's not a big deal anymore.
Richard, you're a shining light in this. You really are. and I've known you for a while, and I would never have given you that credit. I would have thought you're in the IT business. You've got to be on 24/7. And your clients would expect you to be on 24/7. So you've been leading the way in this, and you've been giving the idea to other people too. And so I really, really commend you. You are a leader in this, definitely. And I hope lots of other people will follow, because we'll all have a 4-day week and we can relax. And you're absolutely right. Whenever people have an imposed deadline, for instance, a holiday, people get all the work done before they go away on holiday. So if you have an imposed deadline for a long weekend, you actually get more stuff done, I believe. So brilliant. Okay, are we ready to move on to the business part?
Please.
This is really, really, the purpose of this really is to inspire people that are aspiring to start their own business, to hear business owners, what I call micro enterprises. Those are people that have got 1 to 9 employees in their business, or 0 to 9, as people say sometimes, because you don't count as your own business owner. And they may be using freelancers and everything, and that's fine. But it's the micro enterprise that I'm interested in learning from, or sharing their story with the wider world, and inspire people to start their own business. So how did you get started? What was your first job? And just share with us the progression from there.
Well, certainly, I've already alluded to the fact that, mum and dad, so I come from a very working class background, I should say, and so there wasn't a lot of money floating around, but mum and dad were great. They saw that I was interested by computers, and of course, I grew up in the 80s. The golden age of people programming games and things in their bedrooms. And so they saw that I was interested in in computers, and bought me that Atari 600 XL that I mentioned. And so I've always had a passion for computers. I've always worked in the IT industry. And in fact, I dropped out of my A-levels as a kid, 16, 17 years old, I think it was, because I started effectively writing computer games and making a few quid selling simulator games. It was back in the day.
Wow!
And so that's where I started out. So always had a passion for computers. Had a variety of jobs, when I was younger. Always in IT, so programming, help desk, all sorts of things. But if I sort of fast forward a little bit to where the business started, it was around the time I was an IT contractor. And I was working for companies such as the NHS and Ernst & Young and GE Capital, bigger financial companies or bigger organisations doing IT support for them. And what started happening was some of the partners and some of the senior managers within those businesses started leaving, as they do, and setting up their own businesses. And so I started getting phone calls from these managers and partners who I had a good relationship with, saying, "Hey, you're the IT guru. Can you come and help us set up the IT for our new business?" And so within short period of time, I suddenly realised, well, hey, I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying helping smaller businesses get up and running, and I think there's an opportunity for me to do this full time rather than go out and effectively work 9 to 5 for somebody else. So that was 2002, 2003, and for the years that followed, maybe 3-4 years after that, maybe a little bit less, I was effectively, the IT guy. I was a one-man band. I was your typical IT geek, knew all about technology, and helped these small businesses. 2005, I believe it was, I read a life-changing book for me. It's a book hopefully some of your readers will be familiar with. If they're not, I'll hugely encourage them to go and check it out. It's a book called The E-Myth Revisited by an author called Michael Gerber. Yeah. Very famous book. I know you're familiar with The E-Myth yourself, Michael.
Yes.
For anybody who's not aware of the E-Myth, it basically talks about the concept of building a business rather than owning a job, building systems and processes, including automation, and effectively extracting yourself as the business owner, and no longer just being the technician. So in my case, it was IT. You could be a baker, an artist, whatever your chosen technical skill is. Extracting yourself from the business so the business doesn't rely on you alone. And as I said, when this is a life-changing book, that's a phrase we throw around quite a lot, isn't it? But it genuinely was a life-changing book, and I suddenly realised I wanted to own a business rather than just owning a job. And so in a very, very short period of time afterwards, I really accelerated my learning and started realising that I wanted to extract myself from the business, and I built up systems, processes, lots of documentation, built automation, as you would imagine in the IT industry,
sure.
And effectively started to help the business to move along without me. During that time, I also started. I'm a firm believer, I should say, to preface that, firm believer in you are who you surround yourself with. They talk about you're the sum of the 5 or 6 people that you spend the most time with.
Correct.
So around that time, I started taking a lot of trips to the US and spending time around people who were real experts in the IT industry. And when I say experts in the IT industry, Michael, I don't just mean, technical experts. I mean people who have built $1 million and £1 million businesses, real, thought leaders, captains of industry, however you want to refer to them. And these folks were good enough to give of their time and their experience, and I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut and to listen to the wisdom they were sharing. And as a result of that, over the next few years, I grew the business from myself until at the end of 2010, I actually sold that business and ended up doing what I'm doing today, which I'm sure we can cover next.
Brilliant. And was it always your intention then, when you were building that business and developing it and learning all of the advice that you got, did you then start formulating that you were going to sell the business?
No, it's a good question. There was absolutely no plan in my mind for an exit of the business. Perhaps, it was certainly not consciously, perhaps subconsciously. I realised that by extracting myself from the business could run without me. And the interesting, or the most interesting aspect, I think, of my story is that around the time that I read the E-Myth, I also started blogging, which is probably the thing I'm best known for inside and outside the IT industry. being a blogger.
Yeah.
But my blog effectively was me as a newbie, a newcomer IT business owner, effectively sharing his story of how I fumbled and bumbled my way through growing an IT business. So I was really open and honest about sharing the trials and tribulations, the challenges, the hurdles that I experienced as an IT business owner. And I shared that really openly through the blog. The most interesting aspect of this, of course, is that when I did, and I should rewind and say, as with all blogs, I started off thinking, well, who's going to read this? I don't really mind, I'm writing it for my own benefit. Which
That's right.
is, I'd encourage anybody who says, oh, I'm not going to bother blogging because nobody will read it. Well, don't blog for other people. Write for yourself.
That's right.
I find that Just as a side note, being a blogger has helped me to become a better speaker, a better storyteller, to clarify my thoughts and explain them to people better. So I'd encourage everybody, to blog, or at least to write. But probably the most interesting aspect of it was I started building an audience, not of my potential customers. So I was providing IT support for small businesses in the UK back then. So they weren't particularly interested in hearing, all the technical and the trials and tribulations of me as an IT business owner. But I was building an audience of fellow IT business owners, effectively my competitors.
Right.
And in fact, I remember way back when having a competitor of mine approach me at a conference the one time and saying, "Hey, Richard, I just want to let you know, I read your blog. Quick question, why do you share so many of your secrets with other people?" And of course I said, well, it's no secret at all. All of this stuff is, other people have been good enough to teach it to me. I'm happy to share freely of it. If we fast forward a little bit to 2010, so in answer to your question, I had no intention of selling the business. And it was actually a life event for me that caused me to pause and reconsider. So my dad very sadly passed away in November of 2010. He was a very good age and in good health. So it was a shock. He was 82 years old, but he'd had a good life. But it did cause me to take some time off the business and then consider, well, is this really what I want to go back to doing?
Right.
And like many people who have experienced, a life event like that, the passing of somebody close, a parent, it does cause you to take stock and reconsider. And it wasn't as though I wasn't enjoying running the IT business, but I suddenly had a feeling that, actually I get a kick out of helping other people more. And certainly I did some of that within the IT business, helping small businesses in the UK to grow. But I really got a kick the most out of helping employees and other IT business owners. So return to the story about blogging. So when I sold the business, I had no intentions of doing anything else, at least not consciously. And then an interesting thing happened. I think it was the January of 2011. I was literally sitting around, thinking, well, what am I going to do next? I'm just going to enjoy some time off. And some of my competitors, some of other IT businesses in the Birmingham and the UK area, started picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Rick, word on the street is that you're no longer a competitor. If that's the case, would you mind coming in and sharing some of the secret sauce that you've been sharing on your blog with us, and to do some one-on-one work with us?" So I started doing that again as an experiment for a few months.
I love it. Experiment again.
Some experiment, I know, and I'm still. And 6 months in, I realised, hey, this is a full-time job. This isn't something I can just pretend to do a little bit while I'm saying I'm doing nothing. It became a full-time job, and where are we? Coming up to 5 years later now. I'm still doing it and thriving and absolutely loving it. I get a real kick out of helping IT business owners, sharing my experience with them and helping them to, as we said earlier on, free up their time and concentrate on what's important. So there's the story. IT business owner, blogger. I wish I could say I was smart enough that was an intentional growth curve there. It certainly wasn't, but I think that the lesson that I took out of taken away from it is, I shared fairly openly and honestly about what it was like to be an IT business owner, and without realising that set me up for the career that I've got at the moment.
Well, this is it. I think what is great about your story, Richard, is the bit about, okay, I was doing this for a bit, and then I sold the company, or had the opportunity to sell the company, and then I really didn't know where I was going to go next. And that is often what happens with a lot of people. Lots of people lose their jobs or decide to leave an organisation because they are disillusioned with where they're working, but they don't know where to go next. And that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers, right? You didn't have all the answers. And you could say you were fortunate or lucky, but actually you had already set some of the foundations by your blogging. You had done something proactively, which obviously, hit home with a lot of these IT companies out there, and they'd noticed you. And also because you share so openly and willingly with other people, you built up a lot of trust. And that's key too. So you're a trustworthy person to begin with, and you've got some great advice. So why wouldn't they come and talk to you? So I love the story. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And you've also had challenges, right?
Oh, plenty of them over time. Plenty of them.
So share just one or two of the challenges, and then also balance that with some of the highlights. Can you think of any?
Oh, yeah. Challenges-wise, if I share perhaps the first 6 to 12 months of running the business that I have now, helping IT business owners. And I do hope this comes across in the way that it's meant. I don't want it to come across as though I'm bragging, but my biggest challenge in the first 6, 12 months of doing what I'm doing now was there was literally too much demand for my time.
Right.
And so, and I think this, one of the biggest challenges for anybody who puts themselves out there is, so you do so not expecting success. But if you do put yourself out there as an expert, don't be surprised when people start accepting you as an expert and seeking out your time. And so what happened was I literally had too many demands on my time, and I was the nature of my personality. You can see it either as a flaw or as a positive, whichever way you want to look at it. What is that I try to help everybody that I come in contact with. If somebody asks for help, I will try to help them as much as I can. And of course, what happens is over a period of time, I was running myself ragged. And so there was a very real danger, sort of 12 months into doing, this exciting new opportunity, this helping of IT business owners, that I was going to start not to enjoy it for two reasons. One, I was spending, far too much time running around. But secondly, not everybody who approaches you for advice actually wants a solution. And what I mean by that is, and we probably all of us, listeners, yourself, Michael, everyone, have people in our lives who approach us with or share with us their problems. And of course, it's in our nature of our personalities, the majority of us, to try and solve those problems.
Of course.
But what a lot of people don't want is the solution. They just want to be listened to, or dare I say it, they just want to have a moan about the situation they're in. So what I was doing was, there's no shortage of IT business owners out there who are frustrated that they're spending too much time within their business, or are not getting the rewards, or never take any holidays, or aren't growing the business, and it's having an impact on their life. There's no shortage of IT business owners around the world who are in that situation. What there is a shortage of, though, is, or let me rephrase that, what there is fewer of is IT business owners who are both self-aware enough to appreciate where they are, seek advice, and then action that advice as well. And so what I was finding was I was answering, all sorts of queries from people, a lot of it not monetizing, so I was giving my time away for free, and then getting frustrated myself because a lot of the IT business owners I was speaking to were doing nothing with the advice that I'm giving them, and perhaps getting in touch a month later or 6 weeks later and saying, oh, it's still as terrible as ever. Well, have you done any of the ideas? No, I haven't had time. And of course, that feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall.
Sure.
Excuse me. And the words of one of my mentors from the US came back to me from years ago. He approached me and said, Richard, why are you trying to boil the ocean? And what he meant by that was, why are you trying to, to help everybody? Why not qualify the people and only spend your valuable time with the people who are really going to take on board your advice and do something with it? And so in the first sort of 6, 12 months, I had that problem of too much demand on my time. And actually, Michael, it's, you and I know each other well. It's probably taken me another 3, 4 years to slowly but surely eliminate all of the distractions in my professional life, and get to the stage now where I feel like, I am saying no more often to people and only working with the people who really do value my advice. And that's been a really big hurdle to overcome, and perhaps one that some of the listeners on your podcast might empathise with as well.
Well, I think it's a good one, because although there's been a lot of demand for you, I think also what is really important for people when they start out in their business is to get crystal clear on who they want to serve and decide, this is my target market. These are the people I want to work with, and even have a profile for them, know that they are going to be the people that are going to take action when they get the advice, and they will follow through and actually continue on the journey with you as well. And I can't say I've solved that yet in my own business, because I think it is a challenge to find those people who will, stay the course with you and actually will follow through, and then you can see the results of them, and how they're delivering their own, strategies, etc. Because that surely must be the most satisfying bit for your business or for any business, to see customers follow through and deliver success for themselves.
It is, I said I get a lot of pleasure out of it. And as I should say, the positive, as a result of saying no more often, and actually qualifying who I want to work with a little bit better, the results that I've had of that have been fairly spectacular and really heartwarming in many cases. So I had a lovely thank you card come through the post a few months ago, completely out of the blue, from one of my clients, who shared inside the card. It said, "We've just had the annual accounts come through. Profits are up 1,006%, and then in brackets, yes, I'm surprised too." But and then a lovely little note saying, thank you for the part you played in helping us to get there. So that's on a practical level. On a more sort of heartwarming or nourishing level, I had the wife of one of my clients. We were at a conference about a year ago, and she quietly pulled me to one side and she said, "I just want to say thank you. The work that you've been doing together, he speaks so highly of you, and we, the family," she was referring to me, "and the kids have seen more of him than I can ever recall, and he's just happier."
Wow.
And so that was a lovely one for me. And so it, vindicated, by qualifying who I work with. So I'm only working with the people who I think are going to get it. Not trying to boil the ocean, as my mentor would have said. You're seeing some spectacular results, and that really is, most days I'm not going to say I jump out of bed. 39 years old now, I don't jump out of bed, but I do get out of bed with purpose in the morning, and that just makes everything so much more fun and so much easier to do.
Well, you've shared a couple of highlights there, which are fantastic. So I really appreciate that. So what about the future? When you were running or owned your IT business, there wasn't a plan to sell it. Is there a vision now? Have you got a vision for where the business is going to go?
Yeah, I think it's on two fronts. So the thing that's interested me on a personal level, I mentioned the social responsibility. I've been doing some work over the past few years with West Midlands Police. And I'm on their independent advisory group there for Birmingham South Police, my local area. So on a personal level, I've made it. I feel as though I've made a difference by helping West Midlands Police embrace social media and improve their communications, or at least been a part of that.
Great.
So that's been very rewarding for me. I'd like more of my time, to go to making a difference to organisations. The things that I've learned in the IT industry and the things that I've learned from helping other IT businesses are equally applicable, not just to business, but to any organisations. The power of social media. You and I are here talking on a podcast, which hopefully your listeners will find valuable and make a difference in their personal and professional lives. So I'd like to take that outside of the IT industry a little bit more. And to that end, I did my first speaking engagement at a non-IT conference a few weeks ago, the Content Marketing Academy up in Edinburgh. Wonderful. Really was blown away by that community of business people there, and sort of vindicated my goal of doing some more work outside the IT industry. But on a professional level, that's not to say, I've forgotten where I've had the most impact, or where I can make the most impact with IT businesses. And so my biggest challenge at the moment is trying to effectively to serve more people, again, of the right type of business owners who, who want to take on board and want to action the advice we give them. But I'm in the process at the moment of doing a couple of things. So I've got a book coming together, the IT Business Owner's Survival Guide, which is something hopefully will be a resource for some of those IT business owners who are floundering a little bit. And we're just about to announce the launch of a new private member community, a peer community of IT business owners, and that's called Business Wingman, and that's a membership site that we're putting together. So hopefully there's two things there which will help me to serve more people and to get some of this knowledge out of my head and in front of other people so they can use it to improve their businesses.
And you can reach more people that way too.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal of it. I think the thing that I've wrestled with over the past sort of few years has been, I want to help more people. I've realised that actually one-on-one helping more people is far too time-consuming and stressful, dare I say, and it's probably not compatible with my goal of, the life-work balance that I talked about. But maybe a membership community and books such as the IT Business Owner Survival Guide will help to, just distill some of this, this knowledge that I've got floating around in this head here and get it out to more people, to serve more people, to help more people without specifically increasing or hugely increasing the amount of time that I spend within my business.
Got it. Sounds like a fantastic vision, and I wish you all the luck with that. I've got one last question for you, Richard, and that is, if there was just one bit of advice that you had for an aspiring business owner out there to help them get going, the stranger the advice, the better, but whatever you feel, just one go. I know you will have lots of ideas because that's what you do with people. But if there's just one golden nugget in your brain, what would it be?
I think it would be to not do it alone. And if I'll elaborate on that a little bit, I mentioned that I was fortunate enough to spend time around some of the smartest, most successful people in the IT industry, and they gave freely of their time and experience to me. But I did, essentially go and tug them on the elbow and say, please, sir, can you share a little bit of that with me? So I would say to any business owner, it doesn't matter whether you're in the IT business or anything else, seek out mentors. If you can't find mentors who will give freely of their time and advice, and I'd be flabbergasted if you couldn't in any walk of industry, because my experience has been the most successful people are the ones who are also willing to give the most of their time to help others. So seek out mentors. If you can't find mentors, seek out coaches, people who you could pay for their time and experience. Spend time with other IT business owners who are also striving towards the same goals as you. Listen to podcasts, read books. These are all ways of absorbing, the information, the wisdom that other successful people have got to share. Get out there and spend time with people, but don't do it on your own. It can be a lonely job being a business there, and sometimes you think the harder you work, the more successful you're going to be. I don't subscribe to that fully. I think you need to work smart at it, and there are shortcuts available, and the biggest shortcut is to spend time around people who you can learn from and learn to do things more effectively. So you're not just working harder, you're working smarter.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. That was fantastic advice.
My pleasure.
Now, we're coming to the end, sadly, and I know I could speak to you for hours. Really, really interesting, and I've learned huge amounts here, and I hope the listeners have as well. Just share with everybody, where can they find you, or your website, your social media? Where would you like them to come and look you up?
Sure. So the blog, which we've mentioned numerous times,
yeah.
The address for that is www.tubblog.co.uk. And you can also find me on Twitter at Tubblog, TUBBLOG, and I'm all over there. So I've also got, mate, if I could, Michael, just give a quick plug for my podcast.
Absolutely.
Which I'd love to have you on as a guest on soon, if you would welcome that. Your experience of LinkedIn and building relationships, I'd love to share some of that wisdom with my audience. And so people can find out about that by going to tubb.co/Tubb Talk, TUBBTALK. So that's the podcast. But yeah, Richard Tubb, Google me. I'm not a difficult man to find out there.
Well, I'll make sure there are notes in the show notes as well with the links to your website, Twitter, and your podcast. I'll make sure it's there. And people can find you there and learn more about you and listen to you. And I know you've interviewed some fantastic people that they can learn from as well. So definitely the more, the better. Richard, I know you're a busy man and it will soon be Friday. So have a fantastic week. I really appreciate your time on the first ever podcast of Share Your Story. Many thanks, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Michael.
Staying Alive UK. Share your story.